Back to the third episode of the David Augustine podcast. Today I am joined by my good friend, Mr. Sean Neelin. So, Sean, why don't you give people a little insight as to who you are?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I am honored to be the first guest on what's this called now? What's this podcast called
The
now?
David Augustine podcast. I decided to name
Dave.
it after myself instead of my gamer name.
Got you. Got you. Okay. So, well, I'm honored to be the first guest on the David Augustine podcast. Yeah, my name's Sean, or my kind of like artist name is If You Did. That's where you can find me on social media. And essentially, I'm a filmmaker and music producer. I'm kind of that like generic art guy that everyone knew growing up. I really just embraced it. And yeah, pretty much anything creative you can think of, I make. But primarily, I focus on music and film. So
Now, we know each other through a mutual friend of ours, Mason, who I'll have on later in the episodes. I think he said he'd do it, so keeping it to that. But
hmm
yeah, we've met in person once, which we both vaguely remember because it was back in like 2016, for like a fleeting second. But we didn't really get to know each other till the pandemic started, because Mason started gaming, and he's like, "Well, I have this guy Sean who I've heard all about, and he plays games, and he's like, we'll play some Warzone with him." I'm like, "Sure, why not?" Make new friends during the pandemic. What else is there to do? So, um, and ever since then, we've basically been gaming almost every single day for a year. It's been
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, it has been crazy. It's crazy how that all happened so much. And I mean, it's like I think a lot of people who don't game like don't really understand like how nice it is to have that like social bubble that you can
Hmm.
kind of like interact with every day. Because I know for me, like a lot of the time, like I'm just on there, even just chilling on my laptop. Like I just like to like be able to talk to people every day and interact with people, especially in light of what's been going on in the world and
Exactly.
things like that.
Exactly.
Uh, But it is crazy how we like have met but didn't really know, and then somehow became friends online first.
Yeah, I mean, and it's been great getting to meet new people. I met you through Mason, Jake, Mike. So it's very and Owen. I think I met Owen through you actually, because you were the one that brought Owen into the chat. Um, so yeah, I've made a ton of new friends during the pandemic. Never didn't think that would happen. So you mentioned in your introduction you do music. So what sort of um, inspired you to go into music? Was there a specific artist when you were growing up that you thought, well, I want to go into music production and sort of follow what they're doing?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess like going back, when I was really little, like I've always loved music. My dad is a big music guy. Like I mean, I think everybody's a music person,
Mm-hmm.
but like I remember like going up to my cottage as a kid. We'd go up almost every weekend. And my dad, he'd always have his playlist going in the car. And so I always had music surrounding me. And when I was younger, I knew I wanted to do something in music. I really wanted to play guitar because I listened to mainly like rock songs when I was a kid. Um, like even going back, like I listened to like a lot of like Linkin Park, Sum 41, Blink 182.
The classics.
Um, yeah, and and so what ended up happening was my aunt or something had like a piano, like or like a keyboard that she let us borrow, and my parents were like, okay, if you learn piano and we see that you're like committed to it, then you can learn guitar. And piano was okay, but I wasn't really like playing any of the music I liked. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I had like a performance, like a recital, and I made a little mistake, and
Oh.
that like scared me off of music for like a long time. So I ended up doing like film stuff, and I went to film school. And then just during film school, I just watched this YouTube video of an artist called John. Do you know John Bellion at all?
I've heard his name. I don't really know much about him. No.
Okay, so he's like an artist and a producer, and he posts these videos on YouTube of like him in the studio, like making his songs and kind of just sharing his process. And I just started to find that really interesting, and it kind of like re-inspired me to go back into music, even though I thought I had quit it after I made that recital mistake and like thought it was the end of the road for me.
Right.
And I think just seeing that process and how much fun it looked like, and I've always been creative, so I was like, okay, let me maybe pick this back up. So I bought Logic for my computer and like a cheap like $50 MIDI keyboard and just started to learn production and just, yeah, became obsessed with it and I haven't stopped since. So probably like 6 years now ish.
Yeah, I remember when I was little, I've always been someone that's loved music also, loved various genres of music. I grew up listening to like Avril Lavigne and Green Day and
Classics.
all those like even Nickelback, which gets
Oh, fuck
they get
yeah.
a lot of flack now, but their music's still really good,
Bro, you can't tell
from
me
my
that when
opinion.
Hero
So
comes on, bro,
yeah,
you can't tell me when Hero comes on or Someday that not everyone in that room is actually vibing to it, whether they admit it or not.
oh,
Everyone likes
hundred
those
percent,
songs.
hundred
Yeah,
percent. And
100%.
I remember my mother wanted me to play some sort of instrument. So we got a piano, I got a keyboard, and I thought, well, I'm gonna be doing like all these like classic songs, like the songs that I love hearing on the radio, sort of thing. But what she wanted me to do was go into like the Royal Conservatory of Music, and at the beginning, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I could do it, but I just didn't like the practicing aspect. I didn't like having to follow instruction, and it was just really. I was young and immature and was didn't want to do it. But as time went on, and I heard Beethoven's Für Elise, I realized that I could play that on the piano if I tried. So I got to the level, I think it was level 7 in the Royal Conservatory, where you can start to learn that song. So I
Mhm.
learned it and I played it so much that I have it memorized. So if I sit down at a piano, I can just play that song from memory. And going through that process of learning the piano made me appreciate music even more, especially doing like music classes in school and playing in jazz bands and stuff like that. So I think, like you were saying, you had different artists that you would inspired you, and after your little mess up at a recital once almost dissuaded you from doing music, and then you had some artists that intrigued you again, and you thought, well, I'll give it another try. I just when I heard a certain song, the same thing happened to me. Like I thought I was never gonna play the piano ever again, and I heard For Elise, and I was like, well, you know what? Let me give it another shot, and I'll do it. Um, so I think it's a common thing that everybody can relate to, but it takes a lot of passion to really get into it, if you know what I mean. Like everybody can just throw in a song and vibe out to something like at a club or something like that. But listening to a song and understanding the meaning behind it requires you to have some sort of a passion toward it as well.
Yeah, man. And yeah, and I mean just like going off of what you said, like I feel like one of the most important suggestions that I can give to someone who's thinking about starting music and like of any capacity, whether it's just to play an instrument or to produce or whatever, um, and is 100% like learn to play music that you actually enjoy listening to because it makes the process much more fun. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Especially early on. Like, not to say that it's not important to learn some songs that maybe you're not the biggest fan of, but maybe you're learning like a technical skill or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think overall, like for me, when I got into music production, I picked up my first acoustic guitar, and now I play acoustic, electric, and bass because those are all like heavily like prevalent in a lot of the music I listen to. So I found I was more motivated to practice because I could learn songs that I actually liked. And then as I learned songs I liked, I learned the instrument. As you learn the instrument, kind of to what you were saying, like all of a sudden, like one day you wake up and you can just play something
Mm-hmm.
that maybe you couldn't the day before.
Mm-hmm.
And that feeling is so addictive, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
crazy.
It's amazing, and I remember there was a time where I had a small stint at guitar, but I couldn't really play it because I don't have really big hands. My hand, like I couldn't reach all the different chords on the guitar. So while I tried to, I just couldn't, really. I wasn't really cut out for it in a way. Um, but I remember there was the reason why I wanted to play the guitar for a little bit was because of the Guns N' Roses song, the "Sweet Child of Mine," and that
Classic.
just that
Yep.
beginning part on the guitar. I wanted to learn that.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, there's the different songs that intrigue you into playing different instruments.
for sure.
So you said you went to film school. What did you do at film school, and what did you get out of it, and how are you using that practically now? Because I know you recently did make a directorial debut for a band called Joys, is it?
Yeah, joys.
Yeah. So if you could sort of maybe elaborate on how that came about and where you got into film.
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of like where I got started with film, so like when I was a little kid, like my dad, he always was like recording, like he always had like a VHS camera out, like getting like home videos and stuff. So I remember even being really little and always being like interested in it. I think just because again, my dad, he just had it out all the time. Um, and then as I got older, like I loved movies and TV, like most kids do. But I was just like obsessed with the idea of like being able to like think of a story and like bring it to life, you
Mm-hmm.
know? I think just that idea has always like fascinated me that you can have a thought and, within, a little bit of work, all of a sudden that thought is like a consumable, tangible thing. And I think that relates to all art, film, music, even if you're like a painter or something like that too.
Right.
And so when I started kind of shooting home videos with my friends, me and my friends would kind of get together and we'd like, oh man, like we would recreate like we love Star Wars when we were little. So we recreated like scenes from like Star Wars and things like
Really.
that. Cause yeah, we had those like Hasbro like lightsabers, that you could turn on
Yeah.
and they made the
Yeah.
sounds.
Yeah. I had a couple of those.
Yeah, and so it was almost like it was fun to like pretend that we were them, but like if you filmed it, it felt even like more legitimate in a sense. It
Yeah.
was like we actually were.
Yeah, because you could add effects to the stuff, right?
I mean, in theory, we weren't quite as versed in it back then, but
Yeah.
over time, yeah, we started adding stuff. And I think after music, or at the time, I felt music didn't pan out after didn't want to do it anymore after that mistake at the recital. I think I just leaned really heavily into film because it was kind of a similar outlet. It was like taking, yeah, an idea or a feeling and turning it into something consumable. It was just a different form because it's more visual than sound. And so then I ended up going to Humber College. I took their like Bachelor of Film and Television or whatever it is for 3 years. Graduated from that, and now I just do a lot of independent film work and mainly like wedding videos and company videos and things like that. But I've always wanted to do music videos. It's always been a dream of mine. So, like you were saying, I just directed one by a band called Joyce, who I really love. Like aside from working with them, I actually just
Mm-hmm.
love their music.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that was really, really awesome. So
Yeah, and wasn't that also their first song that they put out, like their debut song?
yeah, so their lead singer, his name's Evan. He was actually a drummer and singer in a pretty like decently popular kind of like post-hardcore band called Downstream, and they broke up a few years ago. And so he kind of
Oh.
started this new group, but it's not really, it's a very different sound. It's very like synth pop. I think they've described themselves as kind of like the Cure meets the Killers, and I think that's
Mm-hmm.
like the perfect way to describe them. And yeah, it's very different. And yeah, so we just got working together, and Evan's such a creative guy. Their whole band, honestly. So like working with them, it doesn't even feel like work. It's just like you get as excited about it, it feels like, as they do, because it's just, yeah, it's so wacky and like fun and just good time. Yeah.
And how long did it take you to? Because I know um, during these times during COVID and stuff, how long did it take you to like plan the music video, and then get the guys together and shoot, and then the editing? Like, how long did that approximately take you all together? Because it must have been
Yeah.
difficult with all the different restrictions in place, right?
Oh, for sure, for sure. And like obviously like even being on set and stuff, there were a lot of like restrictions. Obviously having to wear your mask and like limited to a certain amount of people and things
Right.
like that. In terms of pre-production, it was only like it was probably just like a couple months. Like we would just meet for like Skype meetings and things like that, and just kind of like write it and go over it and plan it out. The actual shoot was only 2 days. We shot in a studio, kind of in the Hamilton, Dundas area.
Okay.
Um, so we shot down there um, for 2 days, and then post-production, what took a long time, a lot longer than it would have normally. Partially, obviously because of COVID and lockdown became heavier, so like we couldn't get together and edit.
Right.
Um, so it was a lot of remote editing and sending each other things back and forth. It was a very VFX heavy shoot. And it was just us doing it by ourselves. And Evan in particular did a lot of editing on it. So that took him a long time just because he was doing it all by himself. And like, he's not a VFX editor. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that took a while. And then on top of that, because it was their debut single, they had to get a lot of other things in order before they could release the song.
Right.
Um, so honestly, that probably took as long as anything too, because obviously they want to make sure they were ready for their release. So we had to wait for that. So we shot at the end of November and it just came out a week ago. So it was a long time. Whereas I would say like a regular music video would probably only take 2 to 4 months at most, you know. Whereas this one took a long time, but some pretty unique circumstances.
Yeah, and I mean, for the restrictions and, like you're saying, the unique circumstances that you guys had, it turned out pretty well. Because
Thank you.
I remember over the course of over the last few months, you've been talking about how it's been going, and the different like creative ideas that you've been having, and it really, um, I think what you were describing, it really came out in the video, and
Thank you.
you hit what you wanted to, especially with the TV. The TV was a cool effect.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think it was quite well done.
Thank you. And and I think the thing that I was so happy about, and this is a testament to the everyone who worked on it, not just me, is just that like it wasn't a huge budget to any extent. This is their
Hmm.
debut song. We weren't working with a ton of money, and I still think it came out looking like very professional. And I think that's just a testament to if you're willing to be experimental and creative and you work with the right people, you don't need to have a massive budget to make something that feels and looks great. And I think that's an important lesson that, any filmmaker is to, or musician or whatever is like, don't be discouraged if you don't have a ton of money or a ton of gear. As long as the idea is there, you can find ways to make it. And I think this video is just an example of that, like so many others.
Yeah, you don't need to spend an extreme amount of money to crank something out.
Yeah, as long as you're passionate about it, that'll translate on screen, and
Exactly.
you'll find ways to make it work.
Yeah. So another thing that I've noticed you're very into is the Call of Duty scene.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
we started in Verdansk, played
Mm.
that for quite a bit of time,
Yep.
and then that became annoying, and uh, the the anger and rage that came out of it, we realized we couldn't take it anymore for our own mental well-being. Um, so we switched to league play, which before we switched to that, and before we started watching the CDL and Optic and the league, I had no idea that there was ever a competitive league. Like before I met you and Owen, I had no idea that Scump existed.
Yeah.
Like I had no idea who this guy was. And
Yep.
then we get into league play, and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, well, Scump does this in league play, or Formal and Dashy are running this sort of play, and this, that, the other thing, and it's like,
Yeah.
who? So
Yeah.
when Owen came in and he knew all this stuff about it, and then he's like, "Yeah, I'm on the Humber COD team, like the assistant or whatever, or the coach." Or And I
Yeah,
thought,
he's their coach, I think.
there's no way colleges have like Call of Duty like teams now, because
Yeah.
back when I was obviously growing up and had these COD games, I thought, well, it's only a video game. You go on a couple hours, you shoot other people, you're dead, you're done. That's it. But it's really
Yeah.
turned into this whole thing. Like the esports scene is huge, because you have like Call of Duty, you have Valorant, you have even like the WoW tournaments, and even like
Yeah.
in Fortnite still. That's still pretty big on the competitive scene. So what was like the first Call of Duty game that you thought, well, this is something that I really love and that I'm gonna just keep playing, and it's like, not only that you loved it, but it's a good time to play with friends. And so what was the game that sort of introduced you to COD? What was your first
Mm.
Call of Duty game?
Well, I mean, my first Call of Duty ever was COD 4 on the Xbox 360. I remember I went to like a really small elementary school, where I was in the same class every year with the same group of people. And so, when somebody was, or when a group of people were doing something, like everybody was doing it. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so, one year a bunch of my friends got into Call of Duty, and we weren't old enough to be playing it, but we were able to kind of convince our parents because everyone was playing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
I remember
so yeah,
those days.
yep,
If it said
yep,
M for mature, I wasn't getting it in the house.
yep.
So
No, and for good reason. Like for things like
yeah,
Grand Theft
yeah,
Auto, like kids should not be
yeah.
playing that
No,
to be honest.
yeah.
I
Even
mean,
even to this day, kids shouldn't be playing it, but they do.
yeah.
So
But I mean, at the same time, there are a lot worse things, and at least
that's
it's
true.
social, and you can play with
Yeah,
your friends, right?
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I played back then, and I played for years, kind of on and off. I mean, there was a few years where like I just quit gaming, like I didn't even have a console
Mm-hmm.
early on in college. Um, and then it was one of my last years of college when I started to really deal with like depression and anxiety and things like that. I started playing a lot of video games because video games, in my opinion, are one of the best like escapes when you deal with that, when you deal with those kind of, like mental health issues, like because gaming is so like you're in the moment,
Right.
you're not really thinking as much about other things. And um, I started playing a lot of video games, and a lot of Call of Duty in particular, because it's just something I've always played and always knew. And so naturally, I was playing it so much, I'm like, I just started to think like, well, how do I get better at this? Like if I'm going to be playing it so much, like I might as well work and like try and get better at it, right?
Right.
I've always been very competitive too. Like I've always, and you talk to any of my former teammates in hockey, I was a competitive guy. I like to win,
Yeah.
and
I've heard some of the stories that we've had in our chats with Mason and Owen
yeah,
about
I've always
Gary on the bench.
Listen, I'm always the first guy to talk shit, but I'm also always the first guy in the handshake line at the end of the game. When
Yeah.
the game's over, the game's over. But
Yep.
when I'm in it, I'm
You're
I'm
in it.
salty.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And so, long story short, I started watching COD YouTube videos, like how to get better, and then that led me to finding Scump. And when I found Scump, I found Optic, and then I learned about the competitive scene, and I figured what way to get better. If I want to get better at hockey, I'd watch the NHL growing up,
Right.
right?
Right.
So what better way to get better at COD than watch the pros, and then you become invested in, just like any other pro sport, you become invested in the players and the people and the storylines more than just the game. And so then yeah, I just became addicted and became a fan of Optic. And I don't watch a ton of sports. I'll watch the Jays and the Raps occasionally. I'll watch every Leaf game. Like the Leafs were my primary. So
Yeah, we'll get into
Optic,
that. We'll get into
I guess.
into them. That's for sure.
Oh God. Oh God. Yeah. So I would just say, yeah, Optic is probably the only other team that I'll watch like regularly.
Yeah.
Whereas like, so that's been really fun, like having something else to watch regularly, even though the Leafs will always be number one,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. They'll be number one. Number one in the standings, but last the playoffs.
Yeah. God, I didn't expect this.
Um.
Maybe I should
Yeah.
have. I don't know.
Going off of the COD, we'll stick with that for now. We don't want to drag people down to the depths of despair. Um. when you started watching like Scump and stuff, was that around when? Because I know you mentioned Blackout a lot,
Mm.
um, and playing Blackout. Did watching Scump help improve your game, like playing those kinds of games, like a battle royale type of game?
Definitely. I started watching Optic the year before Blackout came out.
Mm.
So that yeah, it was a year before. So I've been watching them for about a year, and yeah, when Blackout came out, a lot of people were streaming it. It wasn't as big as nearly as big as Warzone, but a lot of the COD community was, and um, so watching them play that, yeah, I mean like anything, I think if you want to be the best, a lot of times you got to watch the best, right?
Yeah,
And I mean, I'm not trying to be competitive in Call of Duty, but I think anyone can benefit from watching a professional in something they're interested in. And yeah, and that was kind of I was never like a Fortnite guy. I just couldn't get into it for whatever reason. And everyone was talking about battle royales, but I had never really tried it. And then Blackout was the first battle royale where I was like, okay, I get the hype. I get
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Um, it was so fun to watch and play. So
yeah. Because I
yeah,
remember like games like Fortnite, they require a lot of not only patience but a lot of I don't know what the word is. I guess the word is patience because you have to build your own structures and everything. And when it first came out, it was everywhere. It was plastered on all the walls everywhere, basically. Like you'd walk into like a subway and you'd see an ad for Fortnite, and
yeah.
so many streamers also got like their big breaks playing off of playing Fortnite.
Hmm.
Um, and I played it for a while at the very beginning when it was a lot less complicated than it is now. Because now you're all of a sudden you're not just crafting buildings, you're crafting your own weapons and upgrading it that way, and it just I don't know, it just became too much. So I started playing like I was never huge into like the Call of Duty games. Like I played them. I played like Black Ops One, Advanced Warfare, Infinite Warfare, and um, then Modern Warfare and Warzone, and then
Hmm.
now Cold War. But um, yeah, like I think I've told you guys before that I didn't really start playing COD like as much as I do now until Warzone and League Play came out.
Yeah.
And I think when we switched from Warzone to League Play, I was scared out of my mind because I thought everyone in League Play is going to be super sweaty. They're going to be super good at the game. This is probably all they do. And I'm just some guy who's just waltzing in with all these other. Because Mason is really good at sniping and playing games like that. You're really good at it. And then Owen's like a different breed on the sticks
Yeah.
when he gets cracked. So
Yeah.
me going in with three other guys that are substantially better than I am, I was super terrified because I was like, how am I going to enjoy this if I'm getting shit on all the time? And I surprised myself. I do things that I never thought I could do. Like I got in a reverse like ace defuse once. I think
Hmm.
that was the highlight of my COD career.
That
Um,
was it was legendary to witness.
but yeah, playing games like Call of Duty have never been huge until I sort of met you guys and got back into playing with Mason and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so one thing you mentioned about the video games for you was that it sort of gave you an escape uh, from your mental health issues. You've talked to me about this before. One thing you mentioned about the video games for you was that it sort of gave you an escape uh, from your mental health issues. You've talked to me about this before.
Mhm.
Um, so what is it? You struggle. You have ADHD.
Yeah, among other things, yeah.
So as obviously I don't know what that's like. Um, I don't have ADHD. I can't fully relate. So what I want to know is growing up when you were doing like music and stuff and gaming, how did that come into effect how you put things out? Like when like music, how does it affect you when you're trying to write a song or trying to put together different like bars of music and stuff like that?
Okay. Um, yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know me, basically I've been diagnosed with ADHD as well as OCD, and then as well I've also dealt with a lot of anxiety and depression, like the type where you can't leave your bed for days on end. So it's something that's affected my life really heavily. When you're younger too, like you don't really realize like what's happening to you, or like why you think the way you do. You think like it's all you know, so you just assume that's how it is. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Um, and so, like growing up, gaming for me was always really fun because it felt like my brain was always moving so fast that like gaming is a way to slow it down because you're just focused on what's in front of you, right? Because it's so fast paced. And that's why I've always liked games like Call of Duty, even though sometimes people give it a hard time for being too, I don't know, like basic or like simple. Whereas like I like it because it's fast, it's not too complicated. Like you can get better at it, but it's not like crazy complicated. I don't have to think a lot. I can kind of just play. You know what I mean? Um, and so yeah, so I've always found gaming has like been really helpful to give me just kind of a break from my own brain because I just feel tired all the time because my brain is always just moving.
Right.
And then to relate it to music, I mean, there's pros or film or whatever. There's pros and cons. So I would say in terms of the process, ADHD is unbelievably debilitating when it comes to that kind of thing. It's probably what it's most. I mean, you always notice it, but you notice it a lot in work because you get really excited about the fun things in work, but when it comes to the more monotonous areas, it's really difficult to chip through.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for someone who doesn't have ADHD, that might be hard to understand, or you might look at it as like an excuse or something like that. But the thing is, I can tell you, anyone with ADHD, like they will literally tell you that they would trade all the downtime in the world to be able to work consistently because the frustration of like wanting to do something and feeling like you can't is it's horrible. Like it's the worst feeling in the world to have a song that you love so much and like you just want to put out into the world because it's what you care the most about, but not being able to finish it because you have to do like hours of compression or something like that where
Mm-hmm.
it's just going to be boring.
Right.
um it's very frustrating. So having to learn how to work with ADHD is really important. And that's why diagnosing people when they're younger is so important because it would have literally changed my entire school experience had I known. Because then the way I approached, because I just wouldn't do homework and things like that. And, teachers and adults just like they'll say you're just lazy or that you don't
Yeah.
care. When it's not the case, it's like you just don't know how to do it. But
Yeah.
then after a while, you just start accepting that because, what adults say goes, right? When you're a kid.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I've basically had to relearn how to work and things like I don't know if you've ever heard of like a Pomodoro timer or anything like that. Huh.
No, I haven't actually.
So essentially, all it is just like a timer that it's like you work for like 20 minutes, then you get a 5 minute break. You work for 20 minutes, then you get a 5 minute break. And then after a certain amount of intervals, you get an hour break. And that's how like people with ADHD have to work because you have to like reward your brain because we don't get as much dopamine. Like our dopamine receptors don't work properly. So like we have to get more rewards more frequently, even if it's just something small like a break.
Right.
Otherwise, we become disengaged and like literally can't focus. Like our brain will focus on anything else. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think I've described it to you before, and the best description I've ever, I think, heard of it is like, if you've ever worked a retail job as a cashier and you're counting money at the end of the night, or if you're just counting money in any scenario, you're counting your fives, 5, 10, 15,
Yeah.
and there's a coworker there who's trying to be funny. And as you're counting, is just throwing out random numbers, going like 7, 12, like while you're trying to count.
Exactly.
Uh, that's what the ADHD brain is like all the time, all the time. So as you can imagine, it becomes pretty exhausting.
Yeah, so
Um,
I mean, I imagine it would become like extremely hard, like you've been saying, to focus on one thing. So like when you mentioned um, the music and the wanting to put out a song but not being able to focus solely on just the song and to making the compressions and making the edits and making everything that um, someone else who doesn't have ADHD would be able to sit down and just solely focus on that and grind that out. Not having that ability, I can only imagine would be super frustrating because I know, like, for me, I don't have ADHD, but there's points in my life where I have been um, super distracted and not been able to do certain things that I thought I could in a way. Like I couldn't get my homework done on time. And I don't know why. Like I wouldn't be able to focus on a math problem without thinking about something else. Or like focus on an exam that I'm doing but at the same time I'm thinking about doing something else later that day or a completely different exam. So and those little parts in my life have been super frustrating. So to live with that on a daily basis, it, I I don't know how you do it because you've managed to work through it to the point that you are still pumping out stuff. Yes, it's not as fast as someone who has a quote unquote normal brain. Like I think we've discussed that before. People having what's a normal, what's not a normal, and
neurotypical, I think
neurotypical, and then
yeah.
just that idea of having that sort of um, mental health. I guess I don't like calling it a disability
But
because
I think that's what it
because
is, though, man. At the end of the day, right?
true, but I think at some point people saying, yeah, you have like a disability is I don't know. Yeah, I guess it is.
See, but
See,
I think that's a discussion in itself. But I think calling it what it is. I mean, it's technically technically what it should be called is an executive functioning disorder, because my brain is literally uh, physically built different, right? And the way that again, it's not getting pumped the same amount of chemicals. There's a deficiency of dopamine, right? And that's a disability because the same way, like it's a physical disorder. It's just it's
right.
in my brain, right? So I think it's okay to call it a disability because that's what it is. I mean, it is. I understand what you're saying. You don't want to make it sound like it's preventing someone from like achieving what they want to achieve, but I think anyone um, who has a disability of any kind shouldn't be like limited to what they can do. And like obviously, um, everyone's different and everyone is going to have their limits, but I don't think, fuck, I don't know how to word this. Let me backtrack. I guess I guess what I would just say is like, um, I think the term I think a disability is ultimately what it is because it impacts you in your day-to-day life, right? And I don't think by using the term disability, you're saying that that person is like unable to do something. I think you're more so just acknowledging that they have a challenge that someone with like a neurotypical brain
Right.
doesn't. And that's not discrediting or belittling that person. All you're doing is acknowledging that there's something that they have to deal with, and
Yeah.
that's just the hand you've been dealt, whether it be a mental disability or a physical disability. Um, if it's something that impacts how you function from day to day, at the end of the day, that it is a disability. That doesn't make your potential any lower. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. There's people out there that think, oh well, so and so is using their disability as an excuse to not do something. And I
Yeah.
think that's just it's a wrong way of thinking because it's not an excuse. It's an actual it's an actual struggle that they're dealing with. Like they don't want to have like depression or ADHD, or they didn't choose to wake up one day and you think, oh, you know what, I'll be depressed today, or I'll have ADHD today, and then tomorrow I won't. It's something that they were like they have, and it's with them constantly. And to say it's an excuse for something is just, it's not kind. It's not supportive in any way. And like I said, if like there's ever like a time where you need space, or you need to do whatever, or if you just don't text back for a couple of days, I'm not gonna hound you and be like, where the hell are you? What the hell are you doing? Or anything. Like I'll maybe send you a text and be like, how are you doing? Are you doing okay? Stuff like that. And if you don't reply to that, it's like, okay, well, I'm not gonna continue hounding you, because I know what you need is space, and you need just time to work through your own thoughts. And when you come back, you come back. We'll all be here when you are. So it's not like we've said, it's all about a good support system.
For sure, for sure. And thank you for saying that, man. Like that, I appreciate that so much. And yeah, and don't get me wrong, it's like I get it if maybe you don't have like, or you don't knowingly have like a mental, disorder or disability, and it can be hard to understand if you don't,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not something you can actually like see with your eyes as easily. It feels like a choice. Um, but just as like, as a more kind of like general example, it's like, say somebody has like just for a more extreme example, like a disease of some kind, maybe going through some kind of treatment, and the treatment is tiring them out. And that person shows up one day and, is really exhausted or like can't do something. Nobody goes, like, nobody looks at that person and says, oh, well, like, I'm tired sometimes, but like, I still do it. Like, no, you
Yeah,
don't question because they're going through treatment,
yeah, it's like, oh,
right?
I suck it up. I've powered through it. It's like, yeah,
Like, no, you're
yeah,
not
no,
dealing with the same set of circumstances. It's not the same thing. And as psychology and things like that, like advance, and we understand more about how the brain works, and I don't even know what, if it's under like psychology or what, but like as we actually like physically understand the brain as well,
mm-hmm,
you start to notice more and more that a brain can have a physical disability the same way, another body part can,
yeah,
and that's going to affect the way that you process things and the way that you think. And like, are you kidding, dude? Like, I would give up all my downtime in the world if it meant that I could work and just like for days straight and like just pump out everything I want to pump out. I would give up anything to do that.
yeah,
Like, I hate not being able to do something. Like, people think it's like, a lot of people think it's like lazy. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, I would, you think I want to sit on my couch bored out of my effing skull? Like,
yeah,
no.
yeah,
Feeling like I can't get up, and like there are days where like I won't eat because it's like I just don't even have the energy to get up and like make food, And
yeah,
it's like a horrible thing to live through. And I get it, if you don't live through it, it's hard to like understand it, but like I can assure you, nobody would choose to have that, you know?
yeah,
Um, so I guess this what I'm saying is, I think, yeah, being supportive to those people goes such a long way. And I think a lot of the times the people that deal with these kind of things that have a good support system really end up thriving, because on the flip side of it, I find a lot of people who deal with mental health and stuff are very like emotionally aware and are very like creative. I find a lot of the time because they do so much thinking, you know,
right,
and I find a lot of the times when those people aren't in a down state, they do like really incredible things because their brain, even though it has a lot of negatives, there are some positives there too,
yeah,
right? And I think we shouldn't underestimate people based on a disability, or discount someone based on a disability, because um, different people thrive in different ways,
yeah.
Um,
And I hate to do this, but on the topic of sadness,
oh,
the
oh,
Leafs. Growing up, I know you've loved hockey.
Mm.
Um, you were on the team with Mason and Owen and the infamous Turk, who I
Mm.
gratefully look forward to meeting one day down
Mm.
the road.
As you should.
Um, and so, was it the Leafs that got you into playing hockey, or was it just hockey just came naturally? You just wanted to play it as just being a good old Canadian lad.
Mm. Good old Ontario boy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, it's so my dad and my grandpa are both huge Leaf fans. My grandpa loved them growing up, or like when my dad was growing up, and so my dad would watch it with him, and then of course my dad wanted to watch it with me.
Right.
Um, and when I was really little, honestly, I wasn't like big into watching hockey. I just for whatever reason, it just didn't really resonate with me. I wasn't really a big sports guy until I got a little bit older. I was probably like 10-ish. And I started wanting to learn to play hockey all of a sudden. And my dad, I don't even remember why. I think if I remember correctly, there was like a World Cup, like a soccer World Cup, and everyone at school was talking about it. And I wasn't a big soccer guy back then, but I liked the idea that like I could come into class and like talk about a sport with
Right.
someone, like, and everyone's talking about it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, I don't really want to do soccer. What else could I do? And my dad loves hockey and plays hockey and all that stuff. So I went that route, and I just liked watching it more, and I started to become a little more like into it. So I like kind of passively started watching it, but more so I wanted to learn to play.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I just started playing road hockey with my dad, and then that turned into playing actual, because I knew how to skate and stuff. I had just never played.
Yeah.
Um, and then that turned in, I played goalie, and then as I started actually playing goalie, then I started watching the Leafs a lot more. I don't know if it was because I was playing or just because, I don't know, I just grew an interest in it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But so it was around the same time. So, but I started playing hockey in probably like 2003-ish, but I started watching the Leafs in like, I think it was 2005, 2006 was the first year. Like I watched the full season where I was like obsessed.
Yeah.
Um, I'd
Yeah.
seen games obviously over the years, but
No.
I didn't really follow it.
100%. Um, so when it comes down to it, the $1 million question is who's better at hockey, you or Quippers?
You know what? I'm gonna take the diplomatic answer here, and I'm gonna say can't compare it because I was a goalie and he was a forward. So
Okay.
I mean, I play forward now, and I'll give him, I'll tip him the hat for that. I'll give him over forward, but I don't think you can compare goalie and forward. It's just too different.
Yeah.
I will say though, he scored. When we scrimmaged before, he scored on me. So, hey, you know, is what it is. But I'm not gonna answer it directly because there's no answer to be had. Simple as that. Come on.
I see. Democrat over here. All right.
Is that the word? Is diplomatic? Does that work, or is it more?
It's democratic, diplomatic. It's all the same thing, really.
Okay. I just didn't know if I used it
They're
improperly.
pretty
but-
much interchangeable. Um,
Okay.
so now as
I'm the art guy. I don't know.
I know, as a I guess seasoned Leafs fan,
Hmm.
and going over the last couple years of the ups and downs of the team, the good old Game Sevens with Boston,
Yeah.
and then this year,
Mm.
as we know, funny story. I was in the liquor store the other day, and there was a kid, Montreal Canadiens fan, had a Habs face mask on, and had a Habs shirt on, and on the back, it said, "It was 3-1."
No shot.
Yep.
Oh,
It said
that's
it,
cold.
It
That's
said
ice cold.
it was 3-1 on the back of it, and I was like, "You've got to be kidding me!"
That's ice cold.
The
I kind
gall
of
of the
respect it. I
man.
can't lie. I can't lie. That's
Yeah,
kind of a power move in the GTA, you know?
yeah. And I was like, wow, all right. I mean, I like you can't really say anything. They're in the finals, so I mean, what do you think as just a fan who has no bearing over what could actually happen with the Leafs?
Mm.
What do you think needs to be done in order to break this curse that the Leafs cannot get past round one?
Oh, man, that's the $1 billion question. You know, as someone who grew up playing and things like that, like I played ice hockey as a goalie, but I also played ball hockey for a long time as a forward and things like that. So like I've played on both ends. Um, I've played the game at a decently high level. I know what it's like. I get the narratives like leadership and toughness and grit and hard working. I get that end of it. And then on the other end of it, I also love analytics in hockey. I find it really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And I think analytics have an important role to play. And I think, ultimately at the end of the day, analytics, they're not numbers pulled out of nowhere. They're numbers as a result. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
So I think analytics are important too. And I think so what you have is, and usually it's like you either have people that lean towards analytics or you have people that lean towards kind of like narratives and things like traditional hockey narratives and people butt heads. And I've been on both sides. I've loved the like truculence, during the Burke era. I was like,
Yeah,
yeah, this is what you need to win. Then that didn't work. Then I dug into the analytics, and I've really been a big analytics guy. You know me, I've been a big Nylander defender since day one.
yeah.
Again, it's not like I don't see the things that he doesn't do. Like I've played a lot of hockey, and I'm a greasy player. You could ask anyone. I'm the polar opposite of William Nylander, but that's also why I appreciated him so much
Yeah,
because he could do things I could never do.
yeah,
Um, and so I've dug into the analytics, and analytics say our team should be amazing, and we're still choking. So I'm at a point where I've just realized I understand nothing about hockey anymore. Um, I don't know and I know there's a lot of luck involved with hockey, but no one wants to like chalk it up to luck because that's just not fun. Like you don't
yeah,
want to feel like, but I mean, it is a sport played on ice, on skates, like with a puck. Like there
yeah,
is luck involved. I don't know, man. I honestly don't know. All I know is that I will always be disappointed by them, and I will always continue watching the next year because this is something I will bear forever. I
yeah.
can't escape it at this point.
And
I'm too invested.
you know what's funny is that um, I'm I'm actually doing an interview with Mason's sister tomorrow, Lara,
Mhm.
and she did an interview on another podcast that is on YouTube, and they asked her a similar question, and they asked her in the North Division, what do you think the play like this was 2 months ago? What do you think the
Yeah.
playoffs are going to look like, and who do you think is going to go the deepest? So she said, and she was right. Toronto, Montreal, Edmonton, Winnipeg are going to be
Yeah.
in the playoffs.
Mhm.
And then she's like, Toronto and Winnipeg,
Yeah.
and then she said Toronto, but then she said, I'm not entirely sure because I don't trust Toronto in the playoffs.
No.
I watched that and I was like 100%,
Sure.
100%, because as much as I was like, yes, the Leafs are up 3-1, even my mother was on the same in the same boat as everybody else. I was like, we're up 3-1. There's a possibility. She's like, nope, no. And then then they lost the next game 3-2, and I go, well, they could close it out tonight. She's like, nope, 3-3, nope, that's it. She's like, yeah, just every year the Leafs. Like my mother's seen almost everything that the Leafs have gone through, all the ups and downs. Big Leaf fan, and she says there's a point where it becomes just painful to watch them because you know they're gonna lose, and you just hate seeing them lose.
Yeah,
And we
for
have,
sure.
and we have that the Leafs have that caliber that we should have closed out that series at 3-1 and won it 4-1. But
Absolutely.
for some reason, the hockey gods are like, no, we're gonna fuck you over, and we're gonna say all of a sudden your team is going to shit the bed
Yep.
and make Galchenyuk with a turnover. It gives them a 2-on-1, and
He played
then
so well all year,
yeah,
and then
and then
that
the
out of
one mistake
nowhere.
that he made cost us a game, which then gave all the momentum to the Habs, and that was it. It was game over. And it's a rough topic because as much as you want to love the Leafs, and we do, they're a good team. They're a solid team. You have Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, William Nylander. I mean, even Jack Campbell was solid in net. He
I
was
think he still has the highest save percentage in the
yeah,
playoffs.
he was super solid in net
So good.
for the Leafs. Like it's not on him that we lost. It's not his fault at all. He's the
No.
one that, if anything, kept us in each of those games. So it was just Matthews and Marner unfortunately did not come out when they needed to, and nobody knows why, and I don't think they even know why. If you
Yeah.
like, because if you go up to one of them on the street and you're like, what happened, they'll be like, I don't know, I can't tell you. There's no rational explanation that can point to one aspect or one player and be like, that's why you guys lost that game, that's why you guys lost that game. I mean, except for the Galchenyuk one, we lost that because he gave it away and gave them a 2-on-1. But I mean, aside from that, it's just a mystery. It's always been a mystery with the Leafs.
100%, dude. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly, right? Like it really doesn't make sense. And as much as some people will especially in the media will try and push that they know what's wrong or what's not wrong, like
Yeah,
they don't. They'll just go with anything,
yeah,
the same guys that are writing every year, you got to run Nylander out of town. Like a bunch of them are now team Nylander all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I think um I think with Matthews too, like if you go back and you watch like Carey Price's like best saves of the playoffs, like you'll see a bunch of them are on Matthews, and he hit a couple posts. Like he was a couple bounces away from, I think we're not even having this conversation, and he was so good against Columbus. He was so good against Boston the year before that. Like, I I think Austin's fine. Like even if he had been horrible, I would still like he's too good to like even
Yeah,
consider moving.
yeah,
Um, but the thing about Mitch, and while I do think I think he's getting it on really hard right now, and so much of it comes down to his contract. I don't think he's as bad. Like some people are acting like the dude is like useless, and he's not. Like
yeah.
he's a good player. Like any team would be good to have him. It's just the issue is with how much cap he takes up. And you saw it this year, and this was the problem we always knew when you sign those guys to so much money, is when injuries happen, there's just not as much room for depth, right?
Oh yeah,
And
100%.
the Leafs tried to get a bunch of depth guys on cheap deals, and only a couple of them panned out, like Galchenyuk. But like VC wasn't very good. Like Thornton wasn't very good. Simmons, he got hurt, but he wasn't very good. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um, and that's where the discussion is. And Marner makes the most sense, I think, to move just because based on like what he makes. Um, like I think Nylander, you can safely say, is outplaying his contract. Matthews is worth his, and Tavares has a no movement clause. So
yeah,
Marner's the easy one to look at. But at the same time, like they're so good that you feel like they get a couple bounces and like they make a run. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
that's why it's so difficult and so hard to pinpoint. And that's why I think it's just a curse to yours and Lara's point. I think they might like I just don't trust them in the playoff. It feels like they're working at something that we cannot, as
And
humans, understand.
and I think like the the bad luck for the Leafs started right in game one with Tavares going out like the
Horrible.
way he did, and losing the captain, and then
Losing the best D.
losing Jake Muzzin. Yeah. So
Oh, he's just skating.
yeah,
Just skating.
yeah.
Like he
So
could have been on a public skate with his kids and had the same injury. Like
yeah,
it was unbelievable.
yeah. Nothing worked in the Leafs' favor at all. We I think Jack Campbell got a shutout one of the games.
Yeah, he was really good. There's only one game I
And
thought he was eh.
and while on paper we should easily have won, we didn't, and that's just it. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden the Habs just go on a win streak. They they get us 3 games. They sweep the Jets, which I did not see coming at all. I don't really think
Yeah, they
anybody
smoked
did.
him.
And then they beat Vegas, and here they are.
Fair. Well, first and foremost, I need to preface this. I hate the Habs. Like the Habs, in terms of my hate tier, it's the Bruins and the Habs, but the Habs are number one. Like those are the two teams I just cannot stomach. I hate them both. But with that said, Price was like one of my favorite, if not my favorite goalie growing up. Him and Fleury. I love
Yeah.
Carey Price, and my goalie coaches when I was a kid always used to like show video of him and as like how to play, and I think he's an incredible goalie. I hate the Habs so much. I couldn't stomach watch it. It would break me. So I will definitely be going for Tampa. I'd like to see Stamkos get another ring. But also with that said, and with all the talk about the Leafs, like I don't want to discredit though, like Montreal, like this is the best I've seen Price play in a long time.
Oh, for
Cole
sure.
Caulfield is going to be a hell of a player. All these guys are stepping up for them, and while I do think you do get some lucky breaks here and there, I think ultimately any team that wins the cup gets a few breaks here and there for the most part.
Yeah.
And do I look at the Habs and think next year they're gonna go this deep again? They're like a contender, even if they win. No, I don't. But that doesn't discredit that they could very well win a cup this year. And like, if they do, hats off to that group because that is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, and because I feel like
I hate
they
them.
will have accomplished, they will have accomplished almost the impossible because they weren't supposed to get into playoffs, right?
They they have to win the series to have a positive win-loss ratio on the entire year.
Jesus.
If they don't win the series, they will have lost more games this year than they've won overall. Think about that.
See, now that's insane. They
Yeah,
have
it's a
to-
miracle run.
They
Straight up.
they have to win the cup in order to go positive.
Yeah,
That's
it's a miracle run.
that's nuts. It's nuts. Like
It's one of those ones they do it, 100 times, they lose 99. But this could be that one time, and if it is, like, it is what it is. They win a cup. Like, at the end of the day, you win a cup, you win a cup.
it's like
don't
Miami.
ask how.
It's like Miami S&D. You lose 9 of them, you win 1.
Yeah. Yep. And it is, and they can't take that away from you.
No, not one win. It's all that matters.
I hope they lose, but I'd be lying if I said there aren't like guys on that team I would like respect,
Yeah.
like winning, because just because they play on the Habs doesn't discredit. Like they've got some solid players. I still don't think they're a great team. I think they're good. They're not great, and I think they're on a miracle run. But you get your name on the cup, like respect, and they do have some good players for sure. Caulfield, Deneau, Petrie, Price, like. There's some players on that team for sure.
Yeah.
Hopefully Tampa sweeps them because they should.
Yeah, well, we shall see.
Well, you will. I won't be watching. I'll tell you that much. No way.
Yeah, you stopped watching after the Leafs.
I've
said
heard
bye-bye.
myself. I've put myself through too much suffering in hockey this year. I can't do it again. I can't. I need a break.
All right. Well, on that note, we shall end it there.
Cool, man.
I want to thank you for doing this. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thanks for
Um,
having me, brother.
Being the first guest on, it's
An
always
honor.
always nice.
It's an honor.
Um, so if you want, I don't know how many people are gonna see this, but if you want, you can plug your social medias, tell people where to follow you or get the latest updates on Sean or if you did.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, yeah. If you just search if you did all one word, I should come up. My Instagram's probably the easiest to find just because the username is just if you did, whereas I think my Twitter is like if you did like underscore.
Yeah.
So if you find me through my Instagram though, like that's all you'd need to contact me. My email and stuff is on there. And I post all my work and stuff on there. So yeah, if you want, if you feel like checking it out, check it out.
Yeah, and I'll have them all because this is gonna go on YouTube, so I'll have it linked on the in the description.
Cool, man.
So yeah, thank you for being on,
Thanks for
and
having me.
I will see you guys next time. Thank you.